Hi guys, and welcome to another video from Wolkify.com, a page for passionate people interested in personal growth and personal development. Today we're gonna discuss yet another personal growth book that I can recommend. It's called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. For those of you who are not familiar with him, Josh is a world-class chess player. He started at a very young age and won a couple of national and international titles, only to completely abandon chess when he was around 20 and focus on martial arts instead. So completely different field, but he also became world-class in Tai Chi Push Hands. And in this book, he explains the underlying principles on how he became so good so fast in two different fields. So I learned a lot from it, and today I'm gonna share the most important insights with you. Check it out. So the first really important distinction that Josh made in this book is the difference between entity learning and incremental learning. He says that when he was just 6 years old and he started out learning chess, that is what made all the difference and what allowed him to progress so quickly. Entity learning means that you are talented for certain things and less talented for others. So you should only focus on the things that you are good at. This is what he says is not the right way to go. Instead, you should focus on incremental learning, which pretty much means that the path that you're on is the thing to focus on. It's not so much about the outcome that you get from training, from learning, from studying. It's more about your attitude towards learning itself. This pretty much comes down to the concept that Carol Dweck is explaining in her book Mindset. I already shot a video about that. You can check it out up here. It's called Fixed versus Growth Mindsets. And it is exactly what I just described. Some people think that they are good at certain things and bad at others, when in fact it is so much more valuable for us to think that we are not fixed at all. We can grow in any area, we can grow in any regard, and it's really up to us to focus on our weaknesses and turn them into our strengths through hard work. Josh Waitzkin emphasizes in his book that he would come across opponents time and time again who were pretty talented, but he could see that they would not go all the way because they would only pick opponents that they knew they could beat. They would be afraid to challenge themselves because they're not embracing the path, they're only living for the results. They want to get good results, they want to win, they want to keep winning because otherwise they would feel bad about themselves. And that is really a mindset problem. These people are not passionate about learning, they're passionate about winning. And that makes all the difference. If you're passionate about learning, then you don't care if you play against people who are better than you. You don't care if you keep losing, because at the same time you know that these are the opponents that you learn the most from and that you can get the most value out of. These are actually the training sessions that will help you progress the fastest. The next concept Josh Waitzkin explains in his book is soft zone versus hard zone. He says that there were times when he was so focused that just a slight distraction could ruin his entire game. And this game would be brutally long, especially for a young boy like himself. He said when he was just 10 years old, he would already play grown-ups just to challenge himself, but these games would sometimes drag on for 4 hours. And he describes one incident where he would sit there and he had the song stuck in his head from the Ghostbusters movies. You know, Ghostbusters! So he would have that stuck in his head in a loop going on and on and on again, and the more he tried to block it out, the more it invaded his thinking and completely shut out everything else. So he was in the hard zone in this moment. He tried to get it out, block it out, but instead he just tensed up and he couldn't focus on chess at all anymore. Instead, what he realized over time is that he could think in the rhythm of the song. So he would actually train himself to be able to focus even when he has songs stuck in his head, even if there's a clock ticking somewhere in the room. He would learn how to work with these distractions instead of avoiding them and trying to block them out completely. So he said he would deliberately train a couple of hours every single week with music blasting in his room while he tried to focus on the chess positions in front of him. And this is what he calls the soft zone. It's embracing everything that is happening around you and see it as an advantage instead of trying to block it out and in turn tensing up and completely losing yourself. There will almost never be ideal circumstances, so you need to be able to work whatever is given to you. You need to be able to embrace the soft zone. And this is very closely related to a second concept that he also describes, which he calls making sandals. So he tells the story of a guy who is faced with a lot of thorns covering the path in front of him. And he's thinking, okay, how can I cross those? How can I get to the other side? And one way that he could solve that problem, of course, is to make a path. He could just build a road there, completely eradicate all the thorns in front of him. But then if he gets to another thorn field, then he's facing the same problem again, right? So instead what he does is he just makes sandals. And with these sandals, the thorns cannot hurt him anymore, and he will be able to pass any obstacle that is lying in front of him. Of course, this is a metaphor, but I think it's a very powerful one if you really implement it. Instead of making the surroundings perfect, you just build the perfect internal tools to handle anything that your surroundings are offering you. The next concept that Waitzkin is explaining in The Art of Learning is avoiding downward spirals. He says that in chess especially, it's very dangerous that you make one small mistake that in and of itself wouldn't even be that dangerous. But you might be getting angry at your opponent, you might be getting angry at yourself for making such a stupid mistake, and in turn you get irrational. You lose yourself in your anger and in your emotions and then make a couple more mistakes that end up losing you the game. So he says it is crucial, especially in those moments, that you take a deep breath and you relax and you become present to the moment. Look at your mistakes, recognize them, but then think rationally and clearly on how to move on from there. Don't get caught in the downward spiral that just makes you go down the rabbit hole even further. Become present to the moment instead of being lost in your own emotion. What makes this book so cool, in my opinion, is that Josh Waitzkin is a master of two arts that are not very similar objectively. You look at chess and you look at martial arts and you don't think they would have a lot in common. But since he mastered both of them, he could actually find a lot of similarities in them. Waitzkin discovered that when you are on a path of mastery, things become very clear to you and you realize that the underlying principles are almost identical. One thing he noticed both in chess and in martial arts later on in his life is the concept of making smaller circles. Now, what does that mean exactly? He says that both in chess and in martial arts later on, he would break down very complex and big concepts into very small steps. So he makes it manageable, right? With chess, for example, he said that he would study just 2 pieces on the board. He would not start like most other people with very complicated and complex opening movements. So instead he would just have 2 pieces on the board and then learn how those 2 pieces interact with one another. Then he would add a 3rd piece and then he would add another one. So he would make it more and more complex, but he would start very, very simple. He would start with a very small circle and then gradually expand it more and more. The same with martial arts. Of course, it takes thousands of hours to actually master martial arts, but he would break it down in such small portions that he would be able to focus on one step at a time. He would focus on just punching the heavy bag over and over and over and over again for hours at a time until he felt like he had mastered that one movement. And then he would move on to the second movement, and then the third, and then the fourth. So he would also gradually expand from that one first movement. One last important thing that Josh Waitzkin explains in this book is building a trigger. How can you actually snap into the zone and be completely focused, completely ready to perform at any given point in time? So what he explains is that he's also working backwards towards building the perfect trigger. So the way he does that is that he focuses on a situation in his life where he is completely comfortable. For example, just having a catch with his son. He would build then backwards a trigger that puts him into the mood that he feels when he's catching a ball with his son. So before putting himself in a situation where he is completely relaxed, he would build a couple of routines, like listening to a Bob Dylan song, like meditating for 10 minutes, or even having a small snack. Then he would start doing all these different things before being in a stressful situation. And he figured out that that would actually put him at ease in that stressful situation. And then what he does is that he compresses the routine that he has before to make it as manageable as possible. So he would narrow down the meditation to just 5 minutes. He would skip the snack and instead just have a big breakfast. He would listen to shorter and shorter periods of the song that he was listening to before. And then he would compress it so far that at the end, he says, it would be enough to just think of the song that he would normally listen to, and that would already put him into the zone where he's ready to perform at a very high level. This of course takes a long time. You cannot just do that in 2 weeks. Instead, you have to work months and sometimes years on building such an effective trigger. Of course, there's a lot more value in this book. I could only summarize so much. So I really recommend that you buy it yourself. It's only like 20 bucks and it's filled with value. There's so much important information in here. I can't even begin to describe, but I hope I gave you a brief overview and I made you curious to check it out more. If you did like this video, feel free to subscribe down below, leave me a comment what you liked about this book. If you maybe disagree with me that it's not that helpful at all, maybe you think it's a piece of crap, please let me know as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, talk to you next time.